Call to order regular governing board meeting. Ms. Hernandez, can you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Governing Board President, Ms. Maria Guzman.
Present.
Governing Board Clerk, Ms. Maria Hernandez.
Present.
Governing Board Member, Mr. Rudy Santa Cruz will not be here today. Governing Board Member, Ms. Patricia Jimenez.
Present.
And Governing Board Member, Mr. Harry Gerwell.
Present.
Thank you. Next item is approval of June 6, 2024 regular governing board meeting agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Call for the vote. Motion carries. Sorry, I was waiting for the TV. Next item is approval of May 16, 2024 regular governing board meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any question, discussion? Call for the vote. Motion carries. Next item is governing board report. Ms. Jimenez.
I have no report.
Then next item, next person is me. Um, sorry, can't wear my glasses. My head is hurting. I just want to just say we finished another school year. I want to thank all the staff and for your hard work and dedications to our student. Thank you for for everything you guys do for supporting the learning of our students. I'm also glad that the community, I'm also glad that the community have access to summer meals. We know that there's a lot of kids that can't have the meal and stuff like that. I know my son tried it for 1 year and it's just like not the meal that he eats, but the other kids could enjoy it and stuff like that. And I'm glad that we're able to offer that to a lot of our students in the community. And and I'm just looking forward for another great year. Thank you. Mr. Santa Cruz not here. Mr. Getwell.
Yes, Madam President, just a couple of things that I think I'd like to share. So many of you know that I sit on the Fiesta Bowl Board of Directors, so I want to give you some information that just came out. And so, first of all, Fiesta Bowl Parade is going to be on Saturday, December the 28th, which is good. And I'm encouraging us to, send some of our bands to go march in that parade. So, Dr. Ventura, there's an invitation, because
Thank you.
we've been trying to get more of the local bands to come in for the parade. And, we've had a really good, successful couple years with our band. So I would really like to see them highlighted at the parade. And so, I'll get some more information on that. The other thing, it just got announced, but the Guarantee Rate Bowl, which is played downtown at Chase Field, is going to be on December the 26th. And instead of being at 8 o'clock at night, it's actually going to be at 3:30. So it'll be a good time to go and watch a good football game. Because remember, this will be the first year we're in the Big 12.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll be having all kinds of, Oklahoma, you name any of those teams, right? That could also come in. And then the last event, which will be the Fiesta Bowl itself, will be on December 31st. It'll be the only bowl game that's going to be played on ESPN on New Year's Eve. Everybody else is going to be after that or before that. So everybody's eyes are going to be here in Arizona watching the Fiesta Bowl at 5 o'clock on New Year's Eve. So, stay tuned for that because that gets us a lot of notoriety, gets us a lot more revenue because we're not competing with anybody. Everybody's going to be here. And then just two more items on that. So we're in the process now of reviewing 347 grant applications that were submitted. Hopeful that, we put something in for that. I've been trying to encourage us to put the applications in for the grants. And so there'll be a couple of 50,000, 25,000, and $10,000 grants that'll be issued out. So I think it's really good for us to be able to look at them. And then finally, really would like to encourage our teachers. As soon as the announcement come out, I'll let you know. But we have the Wishes for Teachers. And this year we're going to do 500 awards of $2,500 that a teacher can get for their classroom. They can submit, explain what it is and what they want to do with that $2,500, and they'll be able to use that for their classrooms. So I think it's a really good opportunity. Very competitive, because last year I think we had something like 1,500 teachers that applied. We have 500 that we gave out, but it's well worth the time and effort. So there's just some things I wanted to share with the community so that you know what's coming down the pike, especially for the Fiesta Bowl. And again, I would encourage us to get our bands in there if we can, right? And also our teachers to submit for the grants themselves. So with that, Madam President, that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, Madam President. I also want to welcome everybody here this afternoon and thank you guys also for a very dedicated year. Um, we did it. We went through a year and got it over with, and now it's time to spread our wings a little bit and relax a little bit at your pace. So I do want you guys to know that I do really appreciate your dedication to this community and to our students here. It is a very, very blessing to have each and every one of you guys to be part of our children and our community's learning process. I am very grateful to all of you, not only that as an ex-employer, but also as someone that lives in the community and has grandchildren and great-grandchildren attending still our district. So it is close to the heart. So I just wish you guys all a safe summer. Get whatever time you can to kind of recuperate and be ready for a whole new year. That's it, Ms. President. Thank you.
Next item is superintendent update. Dr. Ventura?
Madam President, members of the board, and Isaac community. Eighth grade promotions went really well. I want to thank all those involved. We had great participation from our community, but and we know it's really put together by the teachers, the staff, administration. You guys go way out above and beyond to make sure that they have a memorable experience. So thank you for all of your work with our eighth grade promotions. Last week, we had our Leadership Institute training, and this training involved our teachers and administrators coming together, not just from school sites, but also departments. And they focused on continuous improvement through collaboration, reflection, and planning. The participation is really, it's engaging and meaningful because it helps prepare us for next year and all the work we're going to do, what we've learned, the lessons we've learned from this year, and readjusting, planning to make sure that we can be even more effective the following year. I want to extend my gratitude to everyone involved and engaged in this work because that's something that we all embrace as a community. We always want to be better for ourselves and for our students. So thank you all for your engagement with that. Summer school is off to a great start. I believe we had about 1,200 students registered, and so we're monitoring that. But I'm hearing there's great things going on, and some of our, during the dinner, Principal Griselda Cohen shared with me that her kids are participating in the Isaac Learning Club after school program, and kids are really taking advantage of it, and it means a lot to our families, not just our families here in Isaac, our staff, but also our community. So thank you all for making that happen as well. Madam President, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next item, new business information, discussion, action, approval to advertise the preliminary fiscal year 2024-2025 proposal expenditure budget. Ms. Ling Lane, Chief Financial Officer. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Ms. Lane?
Good evening, Madam President, members of the governing board, Dr. Ventura, and Isaac community. This evening, we're just going to look at some basic budget numbers. These are preliminary. So it's a preliminary proposed budget. And the Auditor General's Office, in conjunction with the Department of Ed, issued a fiscal year 2025 preliminary school district expenditure budget packet, right? It is right now, the legislature has not concluded this year, has not passed a budget. Um, and so they put out a preliminary forms with the legislation that has been enacted to date. And the only two items really that fall in there is a change in the classroom site fund amount and then updating the qualifying tax rate. And I think those are the only two things that have been enacted because they don't involve the legislature. They just involve calculations by other people. However, any additional enacted legislation, right, impacting the district funding, such as our base support level increase, and our transportation support level increase, will show up in a final forms that we receive. So the question is, if none of those things have happened yet, why did they put out preliminary forms, right? Well, it allows us to meet all of our statutory deadlines of proposing and adopting our budget, right? Because many school boards now go dark in July, as ours does. We don't have meetings, even though that's when the budgets are due. Most people do adopt them in June. So they wanted to put out the preliminary forms so we could do our proposal, do our adoption. And then once the final forms in the legislature has concluded with the budget, we'll be notified by email that they're ready and we'll be able to go out and revise our budget. ARS 15905, it allows districts to go back and revise their budget by September 15th for any of the changes that are acted that impact budget calculations by the legislature. So what is in these preliminary forms? Well, the first thing that we look at, obviously, is what we typically call our ADM. We changed the wording a little bit to match with what the Auditor General's financial risk analysis, how they refer to it, so that we're talking the same language. They call it the change in weighted student count, and that's because when we look at our ADM, every student has what we call a weight to it. So every one student that we have equals 1.158 students. So they give us just that little bit extra. So every one student equals a little bit more. Every preschool student equals 1.145 students. So they get a little bit more money. So the weighted student count is a little bit higher than what our actual ADM is, and that's because they weighted. And this is what the Auditor General looks at. So we want to try and in line with them and stay consistent. So if we look at what our weighted student count has been and I just went back the last 3 years, 22, we were at 5609. In 23, we're at 5420, about a 3.5% reduction. For this year, we're at 5141, which is about a 5% reduction. And so when I look forward, where are we going to be next year? Looking at students all moving up, what do we project is coming in? 8th grade class going out, what does our kindergarten look like? Where are we going to be? I looked at about a 4.1% reduction for next year. So what does that do to our proposed budget? Well, our M&O budget is going to go down by about $2.6 million. Now, remember, this is without any increases from the state. This is without any legislation that's been enacted. These are merely preliminary numbers. This is just saying if we went down by 4% of our students right now, based on the calculations, and they're basically the calculations that we used this year, we would go down by $2.6 million. We're going to be able to add to that whatever increases they give us. And so that's just a base of what would happen with the 4%. Our district additional assistance would go down by about $300,000. Because we have the new classroom site fund number, that actually went up this year. And so that number, budget would go up by about $895,000. And then our grants, right, which we knew with ESSER coming to a close, would go down significantly. And that is primarily within the ESSER area. But also remember, there's also that out there with the whole title funds and the Department of Ed and the reduction that came to us. They took 20% away. They did give us a bit of that back, but we're still down because of what's being withheld and how much they're still unsure with what they're going to get from the federal government. Two other pieces of note that I want to make sure that I bring up is, again, using the Auditor General terms is what they point out on financial risk analysis, bases because we always call it budget balance carry forward. They call it operating budget limit reserve. These numbers come from our M&O budget, which is our maintenance and operations, our biggest budget. In 2021, we had about 440,000. In 22, it went up to 1,074,000. Last year, coming into this year, we had 1,998,000. And for next year, we're looking at about 1,200,000, which is a reduction from last year, but just about where we want to be, right? That gives us about a 3%, 4% cushion in our budget for contingencies, those kinds of things. So we want to have a little bit of money, and 1.2 million is a good number. Um, Across the board, talking to other business managers, about 3 and 4% is what they look at carrying forward, so that they have some carry forward, right? Because we want to spend the majority of our money in the year that we receive it for the students that are here, and so we don't want to save a whole lot. When we look at capital, in capital, and this was, I believe, when I brought it up last time with Mr. Garwell, was like, what happened to our capital carry forward? And it went down because we ended up finishing the projects last year, so we didn't have a lot to carry forward. And so this year we're looking at probably having about 507,000. It looks like a unbelievable amount of an increase, but when you go from $117,000 carry forward to $507,000 carry forward, it does come out to like a 300% increase. It's a reasonable amount of money again. Capital, we don't have a lot of. When you're looking at a budget of about 2.7 million in average, you don't want to hang on to a lot of that. You want to spend it on the projects that we need to have done. But we are going to have about a $507,000 carry forward into 25. And just a reminder, these are only preliminary budget numbers. Nothing has changed from this past year, except that we took away the students. We haven't added anything back in. And that's going to happen once the final budget is done with the state and once we get the final numbers. However, in order to meet our statutory deadlines and our requirements, I'm asking for your permission to publish this as a preliminary proposed budget so that we can vote on the adopted budget at the end of June. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there any question from the board?
Yeah. Madam President,
Mr. Gilwell?
yeah, Ms. Lang, as I was looking at the budget itself, I see that we are at about $43 million in M&O, but we also have an additional 2.5 million in unrestricted. So is that 2.5, is that from the sale of the property that we had? Is that where it fell into, or is that in a different pot?
No, Mr. Garwell, the 2.5 million in unrestricted, that's our district additional assistance. That's the amount we get from the state.
Okay, all right.
That's our allocation.
All right, yeah, because I've just taken a look also and I was glad to see that there's a change in the capital as well. And you're right, it's not a lot of money, but 330% over 100,000, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So I also saw that from 24 to 25, we're looking at about a 5.8% reduction overall. So we're going to go from 45 down to about 43 million. So I know we have to plan for those things and try to anticipate. And I understand that it's all contingent on what's going on at the state and what have you. But as we start to look at, our ADM, we really need to start focusing on that as well. And part of that is just because of some of the legislation that's coming out right now from our state, including, some of the immigration reform bills that are coming out. And if you remember in 2010, SB 1070, I know for a fact that in the Isaac School District, we lost about 110 families, 110,000 families that left. They were packed up and ready to go. Overall, the state lost, pretty close to about 250,000 people that left because of 1070. So, these are the things that I as a board member always try to keep my finger on the pulse to see about because it will have a long-term impact on us. However, we're hopeful that it gets on the ballot, but doesn't get passed, but you never know about those things. So it's really important because one of the things that I believe that we as board members, our primary responsibility is fiduciary and oversight. So those are the two areas that, I focus a lot on. And that's why the financials are always good. And again, thank you for making it as clear as this, because a lot of times it can get very complicated. Um, but just knowing that we're already anticipating a 5.8% reduction for 25, that's kind of getting us on the right track. However, we may need to think about being something closer to 10%. I don't know. It just depends on what goes on. Anyway, those are my comments, Madam President.
Any other question from the board?
Yeah, Madam President.
Ms. Jimenez?
Just to clarify, well, two things really quick. On page, which one was it? Slide 7. Just real quick, where it says FY 2025, that plus 330 increase. And I know this is still kind of in the air, just like I touched last board meeting. We're still going to look into probably giving another increase to our staff, correct? Depending on
Yes.
the budget. That's why that's in here.
Ms. Jimenez, this is, it would come back to the slide before that. And any additional increase to the staff would come from additional monies from the state. Now, the raise that's already been approved, the 2.5%, that is also pending, waiting to get our raise from the state. So that is not included in here. We're supposed to get 2% based on what the law says. If we get any more than that 2%, then yes, we will look at giving additional increases to the staff. So we have always committed the monies that we get from an increase to salaries. And so with the 2% that we're looking at getting from our budget, because that is what's statutorily required by them, that that's what we're gonna be able to use that monies to give the 2.5%. If we get any more than that 2%, it will use those additional funds to give additional increases. So, and those aren't even reflected within any of this part because it's not there yet. They haven't approved it yet. They haven't approved that 2% increase yet. So there's no increase in here from the state. There's nothing in here as far as increasing our M&O budget.
Okay, thank you. And then the other thing that I have, just a kind of a correction on your, the whole sheet, your proposed budget forms. If you go to page 2, I don't know about the other board members, but my email is not correct. I don't have that email anymore. If you go to, page 2,
Mm-hmm.
you go to the, it's where it says, it has all of our names, all the superintendent, the admin, board members. Not that one.
Oh,
You're I don't think you have it there, but
it's on the actual budget
yeah, if you
forms.
could just
I'm
look
sorry.
at that because that needs to be corrected.
I will correct it before we submit it. Thank you, ma'am.
Any other question from the board? Call for the vote. Motion carries. Next item, approval to change the June 27, 2024 governing board meeting location to Estrella Brillantes Center for Learning. Dr. Mario Ventura, Superintendent, is there a motion?
So move.
There's a second.
Second.
Dr. Ventura?
Madam President, members of the board and Isaac community, there will be some repairs being done on this building next couple of weeks, and so we thought it'd be best to move the whole meeting to Estrellas Brillantes Center for Learning in case there was any overlap with our meeting. They'll be painting and adding new air conditioner units, 2 new ones on top of in the roof system.
Thank you. Is there any question from the board? Call for the vote. Motion carries. Next item, approval for resolution to request for a recalculation of the state aid pursuant to ARS 15915B. Dr. Mario Ventura, Superintendent. Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Ventura?
Madam President, members of the board, and its community, before you, there's a request for a resolution for us to be able to go to the State Board of Education and request a recalculation of the state aid that was provided from the years 2015 to 2023. This is at no fault of ourselves or Isaac. What happened was there was a lawsuit, Quasimar versus Maricopa County, and the judgment there is going to have districts give back some monies to in property taxes. For Isaac, it wasn't that much money. It was it's about $5,700 total between those years. However, we do have the ability to request for this state to recalculate our state assistance and state aid. So before you, we have that resolution. If it were to pass, we would send it into the state for support in those recalculations.
Thank you. Is there any question from the board? Call for the vote. Motion carries. Next items, Student Services Framework fiscal year 2022-2023 and fiscal year 2023 and 2024 comparison report. Mr. Diedrich Martinez, Director of Student Services, information discussion. Mr. Martinez?
Good evening, President Guzman, Governing Board members, Superintendent Ventura, Cabinet members, site administrators, and team members. Today I'm going to be presenting just an information in regards to our student services framework in areas of 2-year comparisons relating to attendance rates, chronic absenteeisms, and preliminary major incident count behavior infractions. So with you, you have a printed out copy in regards to the information that's going to be presented at hand. If we take a look over at the slides, we have our attendance rate data. The orange portion is our SY school year 2023-2024. And the blue section is the school year 2022-2023 attendance rate per district. If we can see there, we had a growth of 4%. So in school year 2022-23, we had an attendance rate of 90%. This year, our attendance rate is at 94%. Some of the highlights on this section, we have best attendance rate last year was Zito with a 92%. And for 2023-2024, we have PT Co with a 95% attendance rate. And in the area of most improved attendance rate, we have Isaac Middle School. Last year, they were at 88%. This year, they were at 95% with a difference of growth of 7%. So this is the information that we have district-wide for the attendance rate. In looking over at chronic absenteeism, this is a big highlight for Isaac School Districts, and I just want to throw in a shout out to Dr. Dennis, our accountability and data director, as well as our site administrators, our prevention coordinator, Amy Lee Grant, SPED coordinator, Miss Elena Estrada, as well as Ernestina Aragon, our extended learning coordinator. If you take a look over at our information for 2022-2023 chronic absenteeism, we had 1,778 student counts that were considered as chronic absenteeisms. Just on a brief highlight of what chronic absenteeism means, it's basically when a student misses 10% or more of their school days within a year. So an example of that, it would be 18 days for a school year of a calendar day of 180 days that meets 5 days a week. So last year it was at a 35%. This year we had a decrease of 18% in regards to our chronic absenteeism. So we had 779 students with chronic absenteeisms out of 4,965 student enrolled, with a student rate of 15.6%. So just great highlights and congratulations to all of our site administrators as well as all of our stakeholders and community members as well. In regards to our preliminary major behavioral infractions relating to suspensions respond incidents within our data frameworks, uh, some of the highlights in here we have less than 166 infractions respondents in there from school year 2022-23 to school year 2023-24. This is a data framework that we have from kinder all the way to 8th grade. Now, this is a preliminary information that we have. We're still looking over at data accountability measures to make sure that it's vetted with principals before we present our final information on this side. At this time, I'm gonna be presenting a site-by-site informational piece in regards to chronic absenteeisms, attendance rates, as well as preliminary major incidents. So if you can take a look over at our screens, we have Isaac Middle School with a chronic absenteeisms rate difference of 48% last year, and this year with a 14%, which is a negative 34% chronic absenteeism rate. And in terms of attendance rate, like mentioned, it was 88% last year, and this year is at a 95%. Also, with major incidents being reported, as Isaac Middle School, we also had a big drop which is negative 25, a negative 125 major incidents reported. So, looking over at Morris K. U-Haul, we also had a big highlight on chronic absenteeisms as well as attendance rates, and looking over at major incidents with respondent codes in there. Again, going back to PDS, Pueblo del Sol, K8, chronic absenteeism is at a negative 21%, and we had a slight growth of 3% in regards to our attendance rate. On preliminary major incidents, we also had a decrease on incidents from school year 2022-23 to school year 2023-24. Moving over to Zito, we had chronic absenteeisms of negative 14% in terms of decrease, with a slight growth as well on attendance rate, with a 3%, which is 92% on 2022-23, and 95% 2023-24. We can also see our major incidence response data as well in there. We have Sutton with chronic absenteeisms at a difference of 22% decrease from school year 2022-23 to 2023-24, and a slight growth as well, with a 4% attendance rate. And then we can take a look over it as well as our major incidents reporting information in there too. Regards to Mitchell Elementary, we also had a large decrease in regards to our chronic absenteeisms rate. For school year 2023-24, we had a 40%, and school year 2023-24, we had a 15% chronic absenteeism rate, and also looking over at a 4% attendance rate growth as well. PTCO, something similar over at our attendance rate with a 4% growth and a negative 23% decrease in regards to our chronic absenteeisms. And then also having our preliminary information in there of major incidents as well. Moving over to Moya, we had a negative 17 decrease on chronic absenteeism and a 3% increase on attendance rate. And we also have our preliminary data in there in regards to major incidents and for responsive codes. For Esperanza, we also had a negative 18% on our chronic absenteeisms and 3% increase on our attendance rate. And we're looking into our preliminary major incidents data in there with our with Dr. Dennis and as well as our site administrators. For Butler, we had a negative 10% decrease on chronic absenteeism and a increase in attendance rate of 3%, and also finalizing our major incidents data response information. All right. So at this time, I'm going to be presenting a little bit of information in regards to our next steps in both areas of attendance as well as preventative behavior infractions. So for our attendance portions, two of the main frameworks that we're going to be looking into for next year is one of them making sure that we have universal accountability in areas of chronic absenteeism, and also placing professional learning communities in order to make sure that we increase our multi-tier systems of supports for our students, as well as our community members and parents. And in areas of preventative behavior infractions, we are going to be working on digitizing our systems to make sure that we have major and minor infractions so that data can be continuous and we can have progress monitoring so that we can have preventative measures behind it. We also are going to be looking over at our school safety guidelines through our comprehensive school threat assessments, and that's going to be in part with Mr. Angel, as well as our school safety respondent committees. And lastly, we're also going to be looking over at our positive behavioral support handbook from each one of our sites to ensure that we have positive reinforcements in regards to attendance, as well as desired behaviors and preventative measures within school instructional times. So at this time, I'm going to leave it over to questions in regards to the data information that was provided regarding comparison reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any question from the board?
I have a comment, Madam President.
Jimenez?
Well, I'm gonna say, wow. I mean, I wasn't too pleased. I mean, it was a great presentation, but um, what are we doing now? And I know you told us what's the next steps are, but what is it that we're doing now? I mean,
Currently, we're looking over at three different frameworks that are having these type of success measures. One of them, we're progress monitoring all of our attendance measures as well as behavioral infractions through progress monitoring data. So each month we provide data frameworks of thresholds in regards to attendance. So for example, if we have students who are between that attendance rate of 14 to 17 absences or 9 to 13 absences, administrators have that capacity of looking over at their data, the students, the grade levels, as well as any type of demographical population in there. And we're working closely with our social workers, counselors, attendance clerks to make sure that we're doing some type of welfare check on the students, seeing whether or not the students, just checking the background of why their students are being absent, and making sure that we're providing preventative measures so that they don't get to the 18th absence. We're also doing a lot of monthly celebrations in terms of attendance from our site administrators, and they're being very strategic at placing positive behavioral events so that attendance can keep on growing and have that engagement of students wanting to come to school. One of the big things is we're working also with Miss Marcella so that we can have some awareness in regards to attendance for our parents and making sure that we have that significance of why it's important to come to school.
because I remember back before I became a board member, I was an attendance clerk, and I know it's changed through the years, but I remember that I would make phone calls when kids wouldn't come. And if we had to go and visit the families, we would go and visit the families to see what was going on. So that's not happening anymore.
No, absolutely. That's one of our
That's
also frameworks that we have. So we have welfare checks. We're working with Mr. Angel, our counselor, social workers. We're making those phone calls, making sure that our parents are meeting with our site administrators as well as other stakeholders. And then just making sure that every month we take a look over at that data, we take a look over at those students and just make any preventative measure possible so that they're not hitting that 18th mark. So we have thresholds on our EduClimber systems where it lets us know like who are the students who are between that 14 and 17 threshold of absences, 9 to 13, 5 to 8, and then 0 to 4. So we have like tiered systems of preventions in regards to attendance.
Well, what about middle schools? The middle school kids that don't come to school, are they still being cited, going to court, or
Yeah, we're looking over at our CUS scores as well. It's truancy district policies that we also have, but we're building relationships with our students and our families instead of making it something punitive for not coming to school. So we're trying to incite students that school is important, school is fun, and attendance is something that you don't want to miss out on not coming into school.
Well, thank you for the presentation, but I look forward of having these numbers increase next year. I mean, because it's very important that, we find out what's happening, and it's always something that's going on at the homes or we don't know. That's why I asked if we're going out there and visiting the families.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank
Madam
you.
President,
Ms. Hernandez?
I have a question also and a comment. Um, so on these absences, that are being noticed, are they for excused absences or are they just absences in general? Because if a child say had surgery or something like that, sometimes they have to be out at a week at a time. Are those all counted in this as the same as a whole in number or what?
That's a very good question. Yes, these are constituted as absences when we report in the state. We do have differential codes, like if it's a chronic illness or if it's an excuse or a parent phone call or a doctor's appointment. Uh, Over at the state level, an absence is counted as absence for the annual daily membership. So, based on the numbers and configurations that we provided, it's more of a just whether or not the student was present at school. But we take a look over at data as well in regards to whether a student was absent and what were the reasons behind it.
Mhm. Okay. And also another thing, I'm very happy to hear that you're also including Ms. Marcela Lopez in that as well, as far as reaching out to parents on that, because it is very important. I know that as a parent educator, that was part of our instruction on a daily basis to make sure that we shared with them the importance of education and that it was a privilege, to be able to have the education for your child and your role as a parent and responsibility for them to make it to school daily. And if there was any way we could support and help with in that, that was a good thing, because some of the families did come from places that were not exposed to too much uh, easy access to education. And so um, as there's a saying that they always say that el costumbre es más fuerte que el amor, which means that your customs are more stronger than what you'd love to do or love to be. So sometimes sharing with them the importance of that, they will grow and later on be a little more understanding to the process of how the government works here. So kudos to you, Ms. Lopez. I hope in any way or any support that you may need on my behalf or whoever to help you with trying to get those kind of uh, strong messages out to the community. I'm all for that. So thanks for taking her into consideration for that. That is very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question from the board?
Yeah, just one, Mr. Martinez. I saw through the presentation a term called universal accountability. And in my mind, that implies that we have different metrics, from campus to campus. So I guess I'm asking you, what's universal accountability mean?
The framework that we have is our students. It's our students. So all hands on deck. This comes from all the way from our tier one teachers to our to our counselors, to our social workers, to our site administrators, parent educators, custodians. We have a universal accountability that we have to help each other out and become very collaborative and contribute so that students can come to school. Because the biggest way to make sure that we embrace our mission and vision is making sure that our students are attending school and we're providing that safety measure behind it. So universal accountability is basically everybody's all hands on deck to make sure that all of our students are coming to school.
Okay, yeah, so it's, the village concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Correct.
got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the whole consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call for the vote. Motion carries. Next item, call to the public.
Madam President, there's no request to address the governing board.
Thank you. Next item is information. Enrollment is at 4,948. Calendar is June 11th, Kinder, Here We Come event at Mitchell Elementary School for 4:30 to 6. June 19th is Juneteenth, office closed. Next regular governing board meeting will be held at 5 p.m. Thursday, June 27 at Estrella Brillante Center for Learning located at 4006 West Osborne Road,